Randy and Rob. All in favor with the sign of aye? Aye. Those opposed? All right. We missed that first. Welcome to the committee meeting.
Thank you very much.
All right. We will move now to the budget section, and for the operations committee, we have a few budget items: the IMRF, FICA, criminal justice, IT, employee health, risk, and ERP. I will turn it over to Administrator Sorrell, and he will walk us through a high-level presentation, and we'll pass it from there. Thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. Your pleasure as chair, if you want to get the budget on the floor with one full motion, or if you want to take them separately, entirely your choice. Okay.
Sorry. I'd like to put this on the floor with one motion, so I need a first. Mr. Elsasser and Ms. Williams a second. All in favor of putting this on the floor with the sign of aye? All in favor?
Aye.
Sign of. Well, we don't have to favor to put it on the floor. Sorry, I'm messed up.
That's okay.
All right, now I'll pass it over. Thinking and not doing.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. So we've got a short slide deck for the committee today. Just a high-level summary of what the recommended budget is. So let's actually turn the clicker on. There we go. First up is sources and uses. Sources is on the top half of the page, and this is where the money comes from. You can see a variety of rows there that demonstrate the major revenue categories that we represent. You'll see that it is the dark blue lines represent all funds at $157.9 million. The lighter blue line represents the general fund, which is $60.3 million. Uses of funds, or how we spend the money, is on the bottom half of the page. It has its own categories as well. You can see that the largest category of expenditure is personnel-related expenses. Again, the dark blue line represents all funds at a balanced budget of $157.9 million. And the lighter blue lines represent the general fund, which is also balanced at $60.3 million. Each year we do for each committee your oversight of the total budget, and you can see here that there are a number of departments or funds. In this case, it's individual funds. Some of them might be an internal service fund. Some of them might be a special revenue fund. But your oversight has $26.83 million in revenues and $28.99 million in expenditures across those funds. Some historical perspective for you. This is a new slide this year. Again, revenues are on the top, expenditures are on the bottom. You can see over the course of time how the types of revenues that we collect each year has changed. With the gold or the yellow being charges for services, and how that's maybe changed or impacted with, say, in relationship to property tax revenue over the same period of time. And then on the bottom, instead of bars, we have lines to represent similar information, but for those expenditure categories. You can see in this committee, interfund departments or charges is roughly the same as personnel-related expenditures, and then contractual and purchase services are next, and then the rest of them are pretty small in relationship to the grand scheme of things. We also show you each year where this committee or what percentage of the total budget this committee has in relationship to the other committees. You can see that for all funds, you have 18% of the revenues and 18% of the expenditures. In the general fund, there are no general fund departments under your purview and oversight, so you have 0% of the revenues and the expenditures in the general fund. And Mr. Chairman, that is the short slide deck. We're happy to answer any questions the committee might have.
Okay, thank you. I'll put it on the floor for committee members. Member Williams.
I've been pretty much asking this question in every committee, but Scott or Heather, can you give me, I know we're going to be using $11 million in reserves. Can you tell me in this committee a breakdown of what's being used?
Absolutely. We'll let Heather do that, as she's been doing that in the other committees.
Thank you. In the County Operations Committee, there's a planned use of fund balance reserves of $3.3 million, and that's broken up into 4 different funds, or from 4 different funds. IMRF about $700,000, and FICA about $400,000. We're keeping the tax levy flat in both of those funds, and they have built up quite a bit of reserves in the recent years, so we put that as a planned use of spend down. The IT Services Fund has a $1.1 million planned use of fund balance reserves. There's some projects they have on deck for Teams Voice at the courthouse, shifting Odyssey to a cloud-based service, Teller Enterprise Justice, and cybersecurity. And then the Employee Health Fund has a $1.1 million planned spend down, and that is essentially to cover expenses that claims that are incurred through December of this calendar year that will be paid out in the first quarter of 2025.
Any additional questions, Ms. Williams, on that?
So the IMRF investment, so if Scott, if the investments are above policy, or however they set it, do they adjust it the following year? Do you understand what I'm asking?
Yeah, based on participation in / enrollment, and based on market returns and investment returns, IMRF does make an adjustment each and every year. They also evaluate, based on that historical information, what they anticipate their rate of return on investments will be in the coming year. So there's 2 things they actually do on an annual basis. They look at what the rate of return on investments is going to be, and if they expect the market and their investments to perform well, that has a positive impact on what rate they're going to give us. If they think the market's going to not perform well, then that could have a negative impact on what rate they're going to give us. They also then look at what our enrollment is, and we've increasingly seen, and I think the number's approaching or just about 60% of our workforce are now Tier 2 IMRF enrollees versus Tier 1. It might even be a little bit higher than that, and so they take that into account as well, and in how they determine what rate they're going to give us each year.
All right, thank you. Next question, Ms. Williams?
So I would like to make an amendment to the budget.
Okay.
Under salaries and IT, I'd like to have that reduced by $92,000.
All right, so we have a first on the floor. We need a second to an amendment proposal. Anyone have a second? Mr. Renaud. So we've now got it on the floor. Would you like to present maybe some details further than that, or I'll pass it back?
Yeah, so further down in the staff count, we're going to be lowering that by 2. And this department, IT, covers one of the positions that's going to be inactivated. So the other one will be in a health committee.
So just make sure I get, the proposal is to remove personnel budgeting to align with reduction of 1 FTE. Okay. Any questions from the other committee members on this topic? Everybody clear on, and it's $92,000 adjustment on a single personnel line, or is that a combination of benefits and a single salary line? Okay. One more chance for everyone around the horseshoe on this amendment. Anyone have any questions before we take a roll call vote? And I think I'll take a roll call just so we have a clean vote on a budget amendment. All right. With that, I'm going to go around the horseshoe as I see the horseshoe. So roll call, Mr. Phelan. Okay. Yes, this is a vote for the amendment change only. Okay. Mr. Hare? All right. Ms. Coates? All right. Ms. Bryant? Ms. Allison? Mr. Renault? Ms. Williams? Mr. Elsasser? Okay. And I'm a nay on this, but it passes with the vote. So, yeah, oh, sorry, Ms. Blair.
Mr. Reeker?
Yeah.
Aye.
Aye, okay. All right, so it passes. Thank you. All right, any other questions or amendments? Mr. Hare.
The only question I had is Sharon had referenced the 11 million, and there was 3-something million that you talked about. Could you point me to that in the orange pages where I could find that number that you're referencing? Of the orange or no? Okay.
The
Front,
transmittal,
okay, thank you.
transmittal letter, probably.
Okay. Yeah, I was scouring to find it in the orange pages, and
So in each department that has a planned use of spend out, so if you look at IT, for example, on page Ops 29, at the end of the financial analysis, it'll discuss, there's just a one line that says what the planned fund balance use is.
okay. And that's just commingled into all the expenses.
I'm trying to remember if we have somewhere where it's all lined out. I'll look for that for you.
Okay, thank you.
Where we
Good questions. Any other questions from committee members on the budget? Mr. Renault.
This isn't really a question on the budget, just more a statement of something after we get through this process. I know I've mentioned it before, but I think it would be beneficial for us to look at possibly a policy on maximum fund balance reserves. We have something for minimum, what should be in there, but to me, if it goes over a certain amount for a certain amount of time, I think we need to look at bringing that back into the general fund. And these would be only general fund funded revenues that could come back to the general fund, unless there's a good reason why they need to stay in those fund balances. It's something I think that we need to look at as an organization.
Okay. Does everybody understand Mr. Renault's comments? You know, we do have a minimum fund balance expectation. Some of the fund balances currently are well in excess of the minimum, and some of those, I think, logically could be moved back in the general fund. Others, some, as he spoke, we're not speaking of the specialty funds that have their own line items and they cannot be transferred unless you want to add those in addition.
I think those were more tied. A lot of those revenue streams have to remain within those policies. If it is something that could come back to general fund, yes, but you know, care and treatment has to stay within care and treatment. So there's only a certain amount that we can control unless it's, you know, referendum. So those within our spending authority and that fit within those line items are what I'm talking about.
Okay. All right. We'll take that as a forward-looking action to identify it, and we'll probably have to put a policy team together, or I don't know if Administrator Sorrell has any recommendation how to review the policy and make adjustments according.
Yeah, we'll certainly take a look at it. I think it also is wise for us to, once we get the new external auditor onboarded, to engage them in that conversation as well, because they can probably provide some sound advice.
Okay. Great. No, thank you. Ms. Williams?
Just real quick, Nate, the fund balance page is BH 37, budget highlights. So that just gives you how much they're supposed to have and the balances. So if that helps, okay?
great, thanks for that reference. Any other questions regarding the proposed budget with the amendment that has been already approved? Any questions before we go to approval on this budget? Seeing none, the motion will be to approve the presented budget with the amendment that has already been approved. All in favor with the sign of aye? Aye. Those opposed?
Aye.
Those opposed? No opposed. It passes unanimously. All right, thank you. We will move to the next item. We have some informational items. We'll go through quickly the workforce and vacancy report. We will accept and receive the quarterly strategic plan update just for the essence of time management today. So I'll ask Mr. Sorrell to give us a quick walk through the workforce and vacancy report.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. Let me turn to that in my packet here. All right. All right, so this month's report covers activity through the end of, looks like through the end of August. So you'll see applications and hires on the top third of the page. It's ad nauseum for the committee, for anybody that may watch the live stream or is watching the live stream for the first time. A hire in the month of August doesn't automatically mean that they were an applicant or it was for a position posting, because sometimes those recruiting processes take more than 30 days. Middle third of the page looks at the demographics of our workforce, and the bottom third of the page looks at separations to date. So happy to answer any questions the committee might have. And you also have October's as well in there.
Yeah. Any questions on the workforce report? Okay, Mr. Hare?
It just seems like there is an abnormally high amount of terminations or separations for August. Is there any commentary around that?
Well, there is a footnote at the bottom of that. The primarily interns, I think, was the footnote.
Okay.
For summer.
Sorry, I didn't get my readers on.
That's okay.
Yeah, no worries, Mr. Hare. 12 of the 15 separations in the month of August were summer internships coming to an end.
Okay. Yep. No problem. Any other questions? Otherwise, we will move to the next report.
So you'll see on page 13 of the packet the quarterly liability and workers' compensation report. Top half of the page is liability claims for the year. You'll see that we've had 12 claims filed and 7 of them remain active for the current year. Last year, 6 of the 17 that were filed remain active, and we have 3 still active of the 28 that were filed in calendar year 22. So a total of 16 active liability claims. The top right quadrant looks at what the liability costs might be for those claims, again by year. You can see that we still have, for the 4 claims from 2018 that are still active, we still have roughly a little over $305,000 a reserve remaining. And then for 2022, 2023, and 2024, pretty small value in terms of what the reserve remaining is and what's been paid to date when you look at the grand scheme of things. Bottom half of the page is workers' compensation. You can see that in total, we have 2 of the 54 claims still active from 2021, 4 from the still active from the 56 that were filed in 22, 3 from the 50 that were filed last year, and of the 48 that have been filed year to date through the end of September, we have 19 active. Both 2022 and 2023, you can see have some sizable financial liabilities potentially associated with those claims. But most of that has actually been paid out already. So what's left to be paid is actually has the potential to be pretty minimal compared to what's already been paid out. This year, obviously, is a little bit different. We've paid out roughly the same as we have remaining. So happy to try and answer any questions you might have.
Any questions? Mr. Phelan?
Scott, on these claims, I'm assuming there's internal investigations. How many of them are maybe classified as preventable, and then what sort of action is taken by departments to make sure that we can prevent some of these in the future?
Mr. Phelan, great question. I'm going to ask either Shauna or Heather, or not Heather, I'm sorry, Angela, one of them to answer that question, because they actually deal with this on a day-to-day basis, and they're best able to answer your question.
When we get a claim, we work with the department to do internal paperwork, investigation, kind of informal investigation to find out. We'll go out, we'll take photographs of the area, if it was a claim, slip, trip, or fall, that type of thing, to see if it's legitimate. Most of the claims that are on there that are still open are ones that if we do not feel that it was a legitimate claim, we will deny it and then run it through the process. If we believe that it was a legitimate claim, then we will work with the department. Because we have a couple 24/7 operations, that tends to be where we see the most, just because of the nature of those jobs. And they already have some very robust training programs in place. And so usually when they contact us, they're like, have already had some sort of internal investigation and training done. So we do work with them to make sure that if there's any gaps. And then we also have, for example, at the highway department, there's annual training that we do with Department of Transportation regulations and things like that. So if there's things that maybe happen during the year, we'll make sure that we include those in those annual trainings as well.
That's a good question. Any other questions around this? Okay. If not, we'll go now to the vacancy snapshot report for September.
All right, thanks, Mr. Chairman. You can find that on page 14 in the packet. You'll note that green columns is what we associate or talk about each month. And if you do the math, 80.75 positions out of 688.5 is roughly 11-12% vacancy rate. Obviously, there's going to be some offices and departments that have acute vacancy, higher vacancy rates. A good example remains sheriff, but all in all, pretty flat in terms of historically what we're seeing things in that 11-12% range.
Any questions from the committee on the vacancy report? All right, you have both reports in here for September,
Yep.
October.
Correct. In October, we're a little bit higher. So that 86.45 is going to be closer to probably 13%. I didn't get a chance to do the math on that one real quick, but should be pretty close to that.
Okay. If no questions, we will file and receive the strategic plan update, and we will move to resolutions. So the first resolution is the FY25 authorized staffing count, administrative department. So I need a motion to put that on the floor. Mr. Hare and Ms. Coates. All right, so we have the staffing count on the floor. I think from a budget motion earlier, we have a change. I'll ask maybe Ms. Williams if she wants to propose an amendment.
I'd like to propose an amendment to two positions, to lower it by 2 positions. That would be one in IT and one in sustainability.
Okay, so we got a motion on the floor, or motion made. I need a second for that motion. All right, Ms. Coates is a second. So what we're hearing is we've got 2 positions. Mr. Renaud, questions, comments?
Just procedurally, does it make sense to have this resolution prior to going through the budget talks in the other committees?
It is the oversight of this committee to adopt this resolution. So it is what it is from a sequence standpoint. But it's my understanding that the proposed budget amendment that'll be in your committee, Mr. Renaud, has probably got the votes to pass. So I'm not feeling too concerned that either one is going to be out of whack with the other. I would also remind everybody that if you're on finance and executive committees, you've got the ability to endorse, alter, or reject any budget amendment that any other committee makes. So that means, if it were to fail in your committee for some reason, Finance Committee could take it up and make the adjustment accordingly.
Okay, good procedural question. So we have a proposal on the floor, amendment on the floor to reduce the head count for sustainability by 1 and IT by 1. Any questions from the committee members on that topic? Seeing none, I'm going to ask for a roll call vote. Member Phelan, Member Hare, Member Coates, Member Bryant, Member Daly. Oh, I'm sorry, Nora's not a member. She's confusing me by sitting there. All right, you caught me? I know. Member Ellison, Member Renault, Member Williams, Member Elsasser, Member Blair.
Aye.
All right, and I will be an aye. So that's unanimous. Any other amendments on the head count? If not, I'm going to ask for a vote to approve it with the amendments that were made of the 2 reductions. So we will do, want to do a roll call or just unanimous, or a voice? Okay, we'll do a voice vote for those in favor of approving the headcount budget as amended. All in favor with the sign of aye? Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? All right, so that passes. The next item is the copier bid award. So I need a motion to put that on the floor. Lee Bashel, Mr. Hare, and Mr. Elsasser. All right, it's on the floor. I'll pass it over to Mr. Little to provide a recommendation, and Mr. Lanier.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm going to turn this over to Tim Lanier. Tim manages our office services group and also has been managing this contract for many years. And I'll let him go over the details.
Good afternoon. The copier bid, we have a little over 45 different copiers in place. We have, for a number of years, put out for refurbished copiers. We have opened it up if the vendor wants to quote new, but we indicate that preference is given to cost, the best cost, and that it's continued to be refurbished copiers. So we get copiers that are functional. They may not always be, they won't be new, but they will be functional. And if they have issues with them, they replace them and put something different in place. And that hasn't really happened in most instances. So we get functional equipment at great pricing. And I can't take full credit for this. It goes back to before we actually took over office services. Steve Sodermaker, who was auditor at that time, had been doing this for at least 1999. He might have done it, but for sure in 2004. So this has been going on. Each time it's a 5-year commitment. And then the one thing that we have adjusted is copiers have gotten more sophisticated. They have hard drives in them. And so if you have a department like the health department who is copying sensitive information that would be a HIPAA violation if it gets released, we require that we're able to purchase the hard drives out of those. There is a cost to that, but we ensure that no sensitive data is released out into the wild out there. 2 vendors provided responses. One vendor actually provided 2 different options. The difference between the 2 different options they provided were in one model, the 65 page per minute was a lower cost, and the 45 page per minute was a higher cost. And then in the other one, they were the same. We have most of our units are 45 page per minute that we have in place. There's only about 5 or 6 of them that are actually the 65 page per minute. And one of the reasons is they require additional power. So if we were going to to implement the 65 page per minute, we would actually have to do additional electrical work in areas which we would not want to do because of the cost. So the majority will be 45 page per minute, and that's why the recommendation is to approve option 1, because it had more of that option at a lower price. And if you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer them.
All right, thank you. Any questions for Mr. Lanier? Mr. Renault?
Thank you. My question is, can these copiers, are they on our network? Can they be used as printers?
Yes. Yes, these would all be networked and then being used as printers. And actually, we've had where there's been a shift. We've been buying less toner cartridges because they're printing to the printers. We try to encourage that in the offices, and a little bit faster printing. They also will do scanning. So you can go over and scan to a PDF, and so that has reduced paper usage a little bit out there as well.
Thank you.
Good question. Any other questions on this particular resolution? So it's option A is the option that was in the briefing. No questions. I'll ask for a voice vote. All in favor with the sign of aye.
Aye.
And I'm an aye. And those opposed with a nay. All right, passes unanimously. All right, we will now move to our next item, and this is IT, Managed Detection and Response Security Solution. So I need a motion to put this on the floor. Member Allison and Member Williams is a second. All right, I'll turn this over to Mr. Little.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. A little background on this. If you remember, back in 2022, the board approved a full assessment of the information security program and practices at Peoria County. That took about a year to accomplish. It was the first fully investigation we had that was based on standard practices. And in November, about a year ago, I came back to the county board in executive session and shared those results. And out of that, there were two major focuses. Out of that was the best bang for the buck for the county and areas where we really need to focus on. One of them was what is defined as a SCAP scanner, and the other one is a SIEM solution. The first part of that, the SCAP scanning solution, we already implemented. That went into implementation in late December of last year and has been in place ever since, and it provided very valuable information and on our environment. Second part of this is a solution that really improves our threat detection and our ability to respond. The SIM solution is built within this. We went out, I worked with Janice in putting together a RFQ. There's so many people in the country today that are in the security business. So in working with county purchasing, I really wanted to narrow it down on who was really qualified to provide what we were looking for. We went out for RFQ. We had 14 different vendors. We vetted through all those vendors, nailed that down to 5 who we felt could provide what we were specifically looking for in the proposal. Sent that RFP back out. 4 of those responded. We fully scored those, and then the top scoring one we met with to go over that, and that is the recommendation I am making today from NGT Consulting Solutions.
Okay. Thank you for that briefing. Any questions from the committee on this one? I know we all know that security is critical, and I do just a little additional.
This is a gap that comes up every year. As we go through our cyber insurance, we have to go through pages and pages and pages of all the things. One of the key components in that is what we're putting in. We have to answer no to that all the time. In the hope that this gets approved by the board, we're hoping to have this up and running by the end of the year. So that'll check another box from the security compliance side. It also provides us compliance from a HIPAA side and a CJIS side on keeping at least a year's worth of log data. That's something we don't have the capability of today. This fills that. So
Good. No, thank you for the additional, and also thank you for doing the due diligence to seek out qualified vendors through the whole RFQ cycle, because that's very important in this. So appreciate that extra diligence. Any other questions from committee members? If not, we'll take a vote. All in favor with the sign of aye. Oh, Sorry.
Is
Aye.
Oh, sorry,
Aye.
Mr. Ellison, or sorry, Mr. Elsasser. Mr. Elsasser has a question.
I just
Dr.
wondered
Blair.
if the, is this what the ARPA money was intended for for computer protection? You think when that was sent out from the federal government, that's what it was intended for?
I'll ask our administrator to provide a response.
It is something that is identified in the U.S. Treasury's guidelines as an eligible expense. So yes.
Okay. Any other questions? All right, we'll go back to vote. Sorry, Dr. Blair. We'll now ask for a voice vote. All in favor with the sign of aye? Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed with a nay? All right, that passes unanimously. We'll move to the next resolution. It's the approval of the collective bargaining agreement between PCAPS and Teamsters. I need this on the floor, so a motion. Mr. Phelan and Ms. Coates. And I'll pass this over to Ms. Oh, over here. Okay.
Okay, good afternoon. In front of you, you have the approval of a collective bargaining agreement, again with PCAPS and Teamsters. This is our first contract with Teamsters and representing our employees at PCAPS. The union did ratify this unanimously, and we have an agreement for the market adjustment that will happen in November of 2024, as we discussed in committee. And then the wages will increase. There is a 0% on January of 25, 3% on January of 26, and another 3% January 2027. And then again, this agreement will go through the end of 2027. Happy to answer any questions.
Okay. Thank you for the briefing, Angela. Any questions from committee members? Oh, Mr. Renaud.
Is there a percentage of what the market adjustment will probably be?
So it differs between animal control and then the kennel and admin staff. So in looking at recruitment, retention, kennel staff and admin staff is around a 20% increase, and then the animal control would be around a 40% increase.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Any other questions on this particular resolution? Seeing none, take a vote. All in favor at the sign of aye? Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed with a nay? All right, passes unanimously. Thank you. We have one more item on. We have the approval of contract with Hartford Insurance to provide retiree health insurance. Any motion to put that on the floor? Mr. Renaud and Ms. Bryant. And is this yours, Angela?
Sure.
All right.
Okay, so earlier this summer, we brought to you the resolution for going to the pooling insurance with IPBC. And so then as part of IPBC, Blue Cross Blue Shield is the network that then administers the program. And so as we were going through all the different plans, it was then Blue Cross notified us that they were unable to administer our current IMRF Medicare wraparound plan for retirees that are 65 years and older. So we worked with IPBC to identify then another carrier that would be able to administer this plan for us. And so that's where the Hartford and Humana through Benestar provides a fully insured plan for our retirees that are 65 years and older. So in front of you is the ask to be able to enter into a contract with them for this for the 2025 plan year for our retirees that are age 65 and older, which is about 22 of them. Happy to answer any questions.
All right. Thank you, Angela. Any questions, Ms. Allison?
What changes will the retirees see in this transfer?
So it actually, the benefits are actually increased compared to what our current IMRF plan has right now, and the premiums are lower than what they're paying in 24.
All right. Any other questions from the committee? If not, I'll ask for a vote. All in favor with the sign of aye? Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed with a nay. That passes unanimously. Okay, we will now move to the public comment section. See if anyone has public comments for this committee meeting. Seeing none, we will move to miscellaneous. Any miscellaneous from the committee members? All right, seeing none, we will adjourn. Thank you.